The transport ship broke through the clouds of Seven's largest moon, and Cole pressed his face against the window like a child seeing snow for the first time. Below him, the Academy for Elite Combat rose from the landscape like a black knife cutting into the sky. Its towers were made of something that looked like obsidian, dark and shiny, and somehow angry. The whole place looked like it had been designed by someone who really wanted visitors to feel unwelcome. Smiled anyway. He was 17 years old, with messy brown hair that never seemed to stay where he put it, and eyes that were somewhere between green and brown depending on the light. He was not particularly tall. He was not particularly muscular. He looked, in fact, like exactly what he was. A human teenager who probably should have been worrying about college applications and weekend plans rather than enrolling in the most dangerous military academy in the known galaxy. The transport ship touched down on a landing pad that was bigger than his entire high school back on Earth. Other ships were already there, and students were streaming out of them in groups. Watched them through the window, cataloging each species he recognized from his studies. They were tall and powerful with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished black stone. Their eyes had vertical pupils like cats, and they moved with the kind of grace that said they knew exactly how dangerous they were. A group of them walked past, laughing at something, and noticed how the other species gave them space. There were humanoid but covered in patterns of bioluminescent marks that pulsed with soft light. They were said to have minor precognitive abilities, able to sense things a few seconds before they happened. 2 of them walked together, their light patterns syncing up as they communicated in ways that didn't involve words. There were thornbacks, and they were exactly as intimidating as the name suggested. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, with natural bone armor covering their shoulders, arms, and parts of their faces. Their skin was thick, and their hands ended in fingers that looked like they could punch through steel. One of them was carrying luggage that probably weighed as much as did, and she was carrying it with one hand like it was nothing. There were other species too, dozens of them, all female, all moving toward the Academy's main entrance with the confidence of apex predators arriving at a hunting ground. Picked up his single bag and walked down the transport ramp. The cold hit him immediately. Seven's moon had an atmosphere, but it was thin and harsh, and the temperature hovered around freezing even in what passed for summer here. Pulled his jacket and kept walking. He got about 20 steps before someone noticed him. A girl stopped mid-conversation with her friends, all 4 of her arms going still at once. She stared at like she was seeing something that shouldn't exist. Then she nudged the girl next to her, who turned and stared too. Then all 5 of them were staring. "Is that a human?" one of them asked, not bothering to lower her voice. "Obviously," another replied, "but why is it here?" "It's a male," a third said, her voice dropping with disgust. "A human male." Kept walking, he kept smiling. He'd known this was coming. By the time he reached the main entrance, word had spread. Students had stopped to watch him pass, forming a corridor of curious and hostile faces. Whispers followed him like a cloud. "Human male. Must be lost. Is this a joke? The Academy doesn't accept males. Look at it, so small, so soft." A thornback stepped into his path. She was easily 8 feet tall, and her bone armor made her look even bigger. Her face was flat and with small eyes that held absolutely no warmth. "You're going the wrong way, little creature," she said. Her voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "The tourist center is back at the spaceport." Had to crane his neck to look up at her. His smile didn't change. "Actually, I'm exactly where I need to be, but thanks for the concern." The thornback blinked. She probably wasn't used to prey animals talking back. "This is the Academy, females only, no exceptions." "There's been an exception," said me. He walked around her. For a moment nothing happened, then heard the thornback's heavy footsteps falling in behind him, not attacking, just following, watching. The main entrance hall was enormous, with ceilings that stretched up so high couldn't see where they ended. Everything was black stone and cold metal, decorated with weapons and battle trophies from 300 years of the Academy's history. Skulls of various sizes lined the walls. Flags from conquered enemies hung from the rafters. The message was clear. This was a place where killing was celebrated. A reception desk sat in the center of the hall, staffed by a creature didn't recognize. She had 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on her face, mandibles instead of a regular mouth, and 4 arms that were currently busy organizing holographic documents. "Name and species," she said without looking up. "Cole Humans." Her hand stopped moving, all 3 eyes focused on him. "I'm sorry," she said. "Did you say human?" "Yes." "And your name is, that's a male name." "Also yes." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she looked back at her documents, clearly searching for something. Her mandibles clicked in what might have been confusion or annoyance. "There's no record of any male applicant being accepted. This academy has never accepted males. In 300 years of operation, not a single." "Check again," said, "under the new integration mandate from the Galactic Council." The administrator's mandibles clicked faster. She pulled up a different set of documents, scanned through them, and then went very still. "This can't be right," she muttered. "It is." She looked up at him again. "The council forced this. They actually forced the academy to accept a human male. They passed a mandate requiring all military academies receiving federal funding to accept qualified applicants regardless of species or gender. I applied. I was qualified. Here I am." "Qualified?" The administrator's voice rose. "The qualification standards for this academy are designed for the most physically capable species in the galaxy. Our entrance exams have a 30% failure rate among thornbacks. How could a human male possibly?" "I passed," said simply. "Check the scores." She checked. Her mandibles went completely still. "These scores are wrong," she said. "They have to be wrong." "They're not. You scored in the 95th percentile on tactical assessment, the 89th percentile on combat prediction. You scored higher than any human has ever scored on any of our examinations. I studied hard. And you scored in the 3rd percentile on physical capability." She looked at him like he was a puzzle she couldn't solve. "You're simultaneously one of the most qualified and least qualified applicants we've ever received. I like to think of myself as unique." The administrator stared at him for another long moment. Then she pressed her authorization stamp to a document that appeared in front of her. "Room 447, she said. "Orientation begins at dawn. The Academy accepts no responsibility for your death." "Understood." "You will receive no special treatment, no protection, no accommodations for your physical limitations." "I wouldn't want any." She handed him a, "Good luck, human, you're going to need it." Took the, nodded politely, and turned toward the dormitory wing. Behind him, he could hear the administrator already calling someone, her voice urgent and disbelieving. The hallways of the dormitory wing were wide enough for 3 thornbacks to walk side by side. The doors were spaced far apart, suggesting large rooms. Everything was made of the same black stone, lit by strips of cold white light that ran along the ceiling. Students watched him pass. Some whispered, some pointed, some laughed outright. "Look at its arms," one said to another. "They're like twigs." "Do humans even have bones?" her friend replied. "They're so soft." "I heard they can't see in the dark at all, completely blind." "How did they even achieve space flight? They must have gotten lucky somehow." Kept walking, kept smiling. He'd heard worse during his preparation for this moment. Earth's military had spent 6 months trying to talk him out of applying. When that failed, they'd spent another 6 months trying to prepare him for what he'd face. "They're going to hate you," his instructor had said. "They're going to see you as weak, as a joke, as an insult to their traditions. They're going to try to break you in every way they can." "I know," had replied. "And you still want to go. Someone has to be first." Room 447 was at the end of a long corridor on the 4th floor. Pressed his to the lock and stepped inside. The room was sparse but functional. A bed that was slightly too big for a human but would work fine. A desk with a built-in computer terminal. A closet, a small bathroom, a window that looked out over the academy's training grounds where could see students already practicing in the fading light. He set his bag on the bed and walked to the window. Down below, a thornback was sparring with three at once. She was holding her own, her bone armor deflecting strikes that would have shattered concrete. Nearby, a group were practicing some kind of synchronized combat drill, their movements perfectly coordinated in a way that seemed almost supernatural. In another section of the grounds, a massive creature that looked like a cross between a bear and a tank was teaching a class on heavy weapons. The students were firing at targets that exploded in satisfying bursts of light when hit. Watched it all, still smiling. "This is going to be fun," he said to himself. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. He walked over and opened it. Standing in the hallway was a human woman. She was maybe 40 years old, with streaks in her dark hair and scars crisscrossing the left side of her face. Her eyes were hard, and she stood like someone who had fought for everything she'd ever gotten. "Cole," she said. It wasn't a question. "That's me. Instructor, I'm the only human on the academy staff. The administration has assigned me to handle what they're calling the integration problem." She paused. "That's you." "Nice to meet you, too." Didn't smile. She stepped into his room without waiting for an invitation and closed the door behind her. "Let me be very clear about something," she said. "I graduated from this academy 30 years ago. I was the first human to do so. Do you know how many human women have graduated since then?" 17, said. "I read the statistics." 17, out of 432 who applied. The rest either died in training or washed out. "I know. And you're not a woman, you're a human male. Physically, you're one of the weakest sentient beings in the known galaxy. Your muscle density is a joke. Your bones are fragile. You have no natural weapons, no natural armor, no enhanced senses. A child could tear you apart with one arm. You're not telling me anything I don't know." Stepped closer. "Then why are you here, really? Is this some kind of political stunt? Did Earth send you to prove a point?" "No one sent me," said. "I sent myself." "Why?" Smile flickered just for a moment. "Because someone has to show them what we really are. What humans really are, weak, fragile prey." "Exactly." His smile came back, but there was something harder in his eyes now. "That's what they think we are, and they're not entirely wrong, but they're missing something important, something that humans have known about ourselves for a very long time." "And what's that?" "That our weakness is our greatest strength." He walked back to the window. "Every species on Earth that was stronger than us, faster than us, more dangerous than us, we killed them, or we tamed them, or we drove them to extinction. We didn't do it because we were better fighters. We did it because we learned. We watched. We figured out every weakness our enemies had, and then we exploited those weaknesses until there were no enemies left." He turned back to face. "That's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to learn. I'm going to watch. And then I'm going to show every species in this academy that the soft, weak, fragile humans are more dangerous than any of them can imagine." Studied him for a long moment. "You know what the fatality rate is for first-year students?" 40%. "And you think you can survive that?" "I don't think I know." How can you possibly know?" Smile widened. "Because I've already figured out how to beat a thornback, and I've been studying for 3 years. I know their anatomies better than they know themselves. I know where their armor has gaps, where their reflexes have blind spots, where their confidence makes them sloppy. And by the time I graduate from this academy, I'll know how to beat every species in the galaxy." Was quiet for a long time. Then slowly she nodded. "Orientation is at dawn," she said. "Don't be late." She left without another word. Turned back to the window, watching the students train in the growing darkness. His smile was still there, but now it had an edge to it. 3 years of waiting," he whispered. "Let's see if it was worth it." The next morning came cold, and like every morning on this moon. Woke before his alarm, dressed in the standard academy uniform that had been delivered to his room overnight, and made his way to the main assembly hall. 300 first-year students were already there, arranged in neat rows by species. Found the spot marked for humans and stood alone in a section designed for 20 people. He was the only one. The other students watched him with expressions ranging from curiosity to contempt. A group of near the front were laughing about something and could guess what it was. Matron entered from a side door, and the entire hall went silent. She was ancient. That was the first thing noticed. Her body was more machine than organic now, with mechanical limbs replacing flesh and tubes running into her neck and spine. But her eyes were sharp and fierce, burning with an intensity that made think of a predator sizing up prey. She walked to the center of the stage, her mechanical legs clicking against the stone floor. When she spoke, her voice was amplified somehow, filling the entire hall without any visible technology. "Welcome to the Academy," she said. "Most of you will not graduate. Some of you will die. A few of you will become the deadliest warriors in the galaxy. That is the purpose of this institution, to separate the exceptional from the ordinary, the survivors from the dead." She paused, letting her words sink in. For 300 years, this academy has trained the finest female warriors in the known universe. Our graduates have become assassins, generals, special forces operatives, and planetary defense commanders. There is no military honor in the galaxy that a graduate has not earned. There is no enemy that a graduate has not defeated. Her gaze swept across the crowd and stopped on. This year, for the first time in our history, we have a male student, a human male. Some of you may have heard of the Galactic Council's new integration mandate. Some of you may think this is a mistake. Some of you may think this is an insult to our traditions. She stepped forward, her mechanical body humming. "Let me be clear, the Academy does not make mistakes. The Academy does not suffer insults. If this human male is here, it is because he met our qualification standards. Whether he survives to graduate is another matter entirely." She turned away from and addressed the full crowd again. "Today you will begin your assessment period. You will be tested in combat, strategy, endurance, and adaptability. Those who fail will be sent home. Those who show promise will continue. Those who excel will be marked for advanced training." A holographic display appeared behind her, showing a bracket system with hundreds of names. "Combat assessment begins in 1 hour. Find your name, find your opponent, prepare yourselves." She walked off the stage, and the hall erupted into noise. Students crowded around the holographic display, searching for their names. Hung back, watching. He'd learned long ago that crowds were dangerous places for someone his size. Better to wait and approach when things calmed down. A shadow fell over him. He looked up to find a thornback standing there, the same one who had blocked his path yesterday. "Human," she said, "I hope you're matched against me." "Why's that?" "Because I want to see what color your insides are." She smiled, showing teeth that could probably bite through steel. "My people have never killed a human before. You'd be my first." "I'm flattered," said, "but I should warn you, human insides aren't very interesting, mostly red, some pink." The thornback blinked. She clearly hadn't expected a joke. "You think this is funny?" "I think most things are funny," replied. "It's a coping mechanism." Before she could respond, the crowd around the display started to thin. Walked past her, still smiling, and found his name on the bracket. Cole versus None of House. He didn't recognize the name, but the title told him everything he needed to know. House names meant nobility, and nobility meant old money, old training, and old traditions of violence. "Interesting," he murmured. "You're fighting Nuh," a voice said behind him. Turned, a girl was standing there, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with soft purple light. She was about his height, which made her small for her species, with wide eyes that seemed to be looking at something slightly beyond him. "That's what it says. She's one of the best fighters in our year. Her family has produced 17 grand champions of the Academy. She's been training since she could walk." "Good to know." The tilted her head, studying him. "You don't seem worried." "I'm not." "That's strange. My precognition isn't showing me much about your fight, but what I can see, it doesn't look good for you." Smile widened. Precognition isn't perfect. It shows you probable futures based on current patterns, but patterns can change. The lights flickered. You know about our abilities. I know about everyone's abilities. It's kind of my thing. Before she could respond, a bell sounded through the hall, signaling students to move to their assigned combat areas. Nodded to thee and walked toward the arena where his match would take place. The combat assessment halls were arranged in a ring around the central academy building, each one large enough to host multiple fights simultaneously. The floor was made of a material that was hard enough to survive thornback punches, but soft enough to prevent accidental deaths from falls. Probably. Found his arena and stepped inside. About 50 students had gathered to watch, which was more than he'd expected. Apparently, word had spread about the human male fighting a noble. Na was already there. She was tall, even for a probably 7 feet, with the muscular build of someone who had trained extensively. Her forearms were thick with defined muscle, and her black exoskeleton gleamed under the arena lights. Her vertical pupils focused on with naked contempt. "So you're the human," she said. Her voice was melodic, almost pretty, which made her words hit harder. "I expected someone more." "I get that a lot," replied. "My family has fought in wars before your species discovered fire. We have killed enemies that would have driven your people insane with fear. And the Galactic Council thinks sending a single human male to our academy will somehow. What? Prove a point? Make a statement." Walked to his starting position and stretched his arms. "Something like that." Na laughed. It was not a kind sound. "I'm going to enjoy this." Instructor stepped into the arena as the referee. Her face was carefully neutral, but could see the tension in her shoulders. "Standard combat rules," she announced. "The match continues until one fighter yields or cannot continue. Medical teams are standing by. Lethal force is discouraged but not forbidden." She looked between them. "Do both fighters understand?" "Yes," Na said. "Yes," said. Stepped back, begin. Na moved like lightning. All 4 of her arms blurred as she lunged forward, striking in a pattern designed to overwhelm opponents from multiple directions at once. It was a technique her family had perfected over centuries, the opening move of house, guaranteed to end most fights in the first 3 seconds. Wasn't there. He'd moved the instant before she did, sliding to the left with a precision that suggested he'd known exactly where she was going to strike. Her fists hit empty air, and for just a moment her guard was open. Didn't take the opening. He kept moving, circling to her side, his eyes locked on her. "Watching. Learning." Na spun to face him, irritation flashing across her features. "Stand still, human." "Why would I do that?" She attacked again, faster this time, all 4 arms working in a different pattern. This one was designed to cut off escape routes, to herd the opponent into a position where they couldn't dodge. Dodged anyway. He moved with strange efficiency, his body bending in ways that seemed to anticipate her strikes by milliseconds. He wasn't fast, not by standards, but he was always just barely out of reach. The crowd was murmuring now. This wasn't how the fight was supposed to go. "You're running," Nuss snarled. "Is that all humans can do, run and hide?" "I'm not running," said. He was still smiling, but his eyes had changed. They were calculating now, analytical, tracking every move she made. "I'm watching." "Watching what?" "You." She came at him again, and this time she connected. Her lower right fist caught him in the ribs, lifting him off his feet and sending him tumbling across the arena floor. The crowd cheered. First blood. Got up slowly, one hand pressed to his side. That would bruise badly, maybe crack a rib, but he was still standing, still smiling. "There," Na said. "Now you know what you're facing. Yield now, and I'll let you walk out of here." "No thanks," rolled his shoulders and settled back into his stance. "I'm just getting started." She attacked again, confident now. She'd proven she could hit him. She'd proven his speed wasn't enough. This was just cleanup. But something was different. Wasn't dodging randomly anymore. He was moving with purpose, positioning himself in specific spots, forcing Na to adjust her attacks in specific ways. Testing her, probing her, finding her weaknesses. Every had the same basic physiology: 4 arms, exoskeleton armor, enhanced speed and strength. But Na's family had a specific fighting style, one that relied heavily on overwhelming force in the opening moments of combat. They trained for quick victories against inferior opponents. They didn't train for extended fights against opponents who refused to go down. Na was getting frustrated. Her attacks were becoming sloppier, more aggressive. She was trying to end the fight quickly, using more and more of her strength with each strike. And was still standing, still dodging, still watching. "What are you doing?" she demanded, breathing harder now. "Why won't you fight back?" "I am fighting back," said. "You just can't see it yet." He moved forward for the first time, and Na reacted instinctively, all 4 arms coming up to defend against an attack that never came. Instead, his hand shot out and pressed against a specific point on her upper right arm, right where 2 plates of her exoskeleton met. The arm went limp. Na stared at it in disbelief. What? Was already moving. His hand found another joint, this time on her lower left arm. Another precisely applied pressure. Another limb going dead. "Your exoskeleton has 17 major joints," said, circling around her. "Each joint has a gap where the plates meet. The gaps are tiny, but they're there. And if you know exactly where to apply pressure, exactly how much force to use, you can temporarily disable the neural pathways that control each limb." He swept her right leg at a point where her knee armor didn't quite connect to her thigh armor. She crashed to the ground, 3 limbs disabled, staring up at him with something that might have been fear. "I've been studying anatomy for 3 years," said. "I know your body better than you do." The arena was completely silent. Na tried to rise using her one remaining arm, but was there first, pressing against the final weak point. All 4 of her arms lay useless at her sides. "Do you yield?" he asked. She looked up at him, and he could see the war happening behind her eyes. Pride fighting against practicality. Rage fighting against recognition. "How?" she whispered. "How did you know?" "I told you, I watched." He offered her his hand. "You're an incredible fighter. Your speed is amazing. Your technique is nearly perfect. But you've spent your whole life fighting opponents who couldn't match your strength. You never learned what to do when someone took your strength away." She stared at his hand for a long moment. Then slowly she took it. "I yield," she said. Helped her up. Her arms were already starting to regain sensation. The disability was temporary by design. She rubbed her shoulder, looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. 43 seconds, instructor announced, her voice carefully neutral. "Winner, Cole." The crowd exploded, not in cheers, in shocked, disbelieving chatter. The human had won. The soft, weak, pathetic human had defeated a noble in under a minute. Walked out of the arena, still smiling. Behind him, Na watched him go. Something had changed in her expression. The contempt was gone. In its place was something that looked almost like curiosity. The news spread through the academy like wildfire. By dinner time, everyone knew. The human had won his first match, not by luck, not by cheating, but by systematically dismantling one of the best fighters in the first-year class. He'd found weaknesses that no one knew existed. He'd turned his greatest strength, her exoskeleton, into a liability. Sat alone in the dining hall, eating something that the academy's chef insisted was nutritious even if it looked like purple oatmeal. Students at other tables kept glancing at him, whispering. "Mind if I sit?" a voice asked. He looked up. It was the from earlier, the one who'd warned him about Na. "Go ahead." She sat across from him, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with uncertain yellow light. "I'm Ra. I wanted to apologize." "For what?" "For doubting you. My precognition showed you losing that fight. It showed Na breaking your ribs in the first 10 seconds. It showed." She trailed off. "It showed what the patterns predicted," said. "You weren't wrong. That was the most likely outcome. I just changed the pattern." Ra's lights flickered. How do you change something that's already been seen? Your precognition works by reading probability waves. You see futures that are likely based on current actions and intentions, but you can't read intentions you don't understand. Took another bite of his purple oatmeal. I wasn't fighting Na, I was studying her. My intention wasn't to win, it was to learn. And once I'd learned enough, winning was easy. That's terrifying. Only if you're my opponent. A shadow fell over the table. Looked up to find Na standing there, all four of her arms folded across her chest. The students at nearby tables went quiet, watching. Human, she said. He replied. She stood there for a moment, clearly struggling with something. Then, abruptly, she sat down next to Ra. I want a rematch, she said. No. What do you mean, no? I demand. A rematch won't help you, said. You'd fight the same way you did today, maybe a little more careful around the weak points I showed you. But the result would be the same because you haven't learned anything new. You've just learned to be afraid of something. Na's mandibles clicked in frustration. Then what do you suggest? Train with me. Both aliens stared at him. Train with you? Ra asked. Why would she train with the person who just defeated her? Because I know things she doesn't, things that could make her a better fighter. Pushed his food aside and leaned forward. I didn't beat Na because I'm stronger or faster. I beat her because I understood her body better than she did. What if she understood her body that well? What if she knew every weak point, every vulnerability, and trained specifically to protect them? Na was quiet for a moment. You would teach me, after I called you weak, after I tried to hurt you. You were honest about what you thought of me. I appreciate honesty. Smiled. Besides, this academy wants to make us into the best warriors in the galaxy. How can we do that if we only learn from instructors? We should be learning from each other. The dining hall had gone very quiet. Students at other tables had stopped pretending not to listen. He's right, Ra said slowly. My precognition lets me see likely futures, but I can't control what I see. If I understood how he changes probability patterns, maybe I could. Exactly, said. We all have different abilities, different weaknesses, different ways of fighting. What if we combine them? What if we taught each other? Na and Ra exchanged glances. The other students won't like it, Na said. A noble studying under a human. Then they can keep losing to people like me. Stood up. My room is 447. I study every night from 8 to midnight. You're welcome to join me any time. He picked up his tray and walked toward the exit. At the door, he paused and looked back. Oh, and Na, your family's opening technique is impressive, but it has a timing flaw in the third strike of the second sequence. Your lower left arm moves a fraction of a second too slow because you're compensating for an old injury in your shoulder. You should get that looked at. He left before she could respond. Na stared at the door where he disappeared. Her lower left shoulder, the one she'd injured 3 years ago in a training accident, the one she'd thought she'd completely recovered from, suddenly ached. How did he know that? She whispered. Ra's lights were pulsing rapidly. He watched you fight for less than a minute and diagnosed a 3-year-old injury from the way you move. She shook her head. That's not natural. That's not even possible. And yet he did it. They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the dining hall slowly returned to normal volume, but the conversations were different now. Everyone was talking about the human. I'm going to his room tonight, Na said finally. Ra nodded, me too. The first weeks at the academy were brutal for everyone, but they were especially brutal for. Every physical test pushed him to his absolute limits. While Thornbacks could run for hours without tiring, was gasping after the first mile. While could lift weights that would crush a car, struggled with loads that the other students lifted one-handed. But the combat assessments told a different story. Match after match kept winning. Not all of them. He lost badly to a Thornback named who was simply too armored for his joint targeting techniques to work. He lost to a who had better precognition than most and predicted his adaptation patterns. He lost to several students who were just plain better fighters than he was. But he won more than he lost, and the wins were always strange, always unexpected. always based on some weakness the opponent didn't know they had. The study sessions in his room grew. What started with just Na and Ra expanded to include others. A young Thornback named who had been struggling in tactical classes. A human girl named who was the only other person from Earth in the first-year class. From a lesser house who wanted to prove herself against the nobles. Taught them all. Not fighting techniques, he wasn't a better fighter than any of them. He taught them observation, analysis, pattern recognition. He taught them to see their opponents not as enemies but as puzzles to be solved. Every species has weaknesses, he explained one night, a holographic diagram of Thornback anatomy floating in the center of his room. Not just physical weaknesses, psychological ones too. Thornbacks are confident in their armor, so they don't expect attacks to actually hurt them. That makes them slow to react when something does get through. Trust their speed, so they extend themselves too far when they attack. Rely on precognition, so they freeze up when they face something they can't predict. What about humans? Asked. Smiled. Humans are afraid of everything. We assume we're going to lose, so we plan for failure constantly. It makes us paranoid and cautious. But it also means we're never surprised when things go wrong. That sounds more like a strength than a weakness, Na said. Everything is both, that's the point. A strength pushed too far becomes a weakness. A weakness embraced correctly becomes a strength. The trick is knowing where the line is. Word of the study sessions spread. Some students mocked them. A human teaching alien warriors seemed absurd on its face. But as the weeks passed and students started improving in the rankings, the mockery grew quieter. Not everyone was happy about it. Of the Thornback clans watched the humans rise with growing fury. She was a fifth-year student, a senior who had earned her place through blood and pain and sacrifice. Her people had been warriors when humans were still living in caves. And now this soft, weak creature was teaching her kind how to fight. It was an insult, an abomination, something that could not be tolerated. She gathered like-minded students, traditionalists who believed the academy should remain pure, unchanged by outside influence. They called themselves the keepers of the old ways, and they began making life difficult in ways that couldn't be traced back to them. Equipment went missing, food was contaminated, training dummies malfunctioned at critical moments. Small things, petty things, but they added up. Noticed, of course he noticed everything, but he said nothing. He adapted. He found new equipment. He checked his food before eating it. He started using the training dummies that other students had just finished with, knowing those ones worked. The keepers grew frustrated. Their harassment wasn't working. The human kept smiling, kept winning, kept teaching. So they escalated. It happened on a night 3 weeks after the combat assessments. Was walking back from the library, tired but satisfied after a long study session on neural architecture. The corridor between the library and the dormitory was empty at this hour, lit only by the dim emergency strips along the ceiling. 6 figures emerged from the shadows. Thornbacks, all of them. They wore masks that hid their faces but recognized their body language immediately. Trained fighters, probably, and they weren't here to talk. Human, the leader said, you don't belong here. Stopped walking. His smile was still there, but something had changed behind his eyes. I've been told that before. The council forced the academy to accept you. They can't force us to tolerate your presence. The leader stepped forward, her bone armor gleaming in the dim light. Leave now, voluntarily, or we'll make sure you can never walk again. That's very specific. Have you been practicing that speech? A growl from one of the others. This isn't a joke, human. No, agreed, it's not. He didn't move, didn't run, didn't call for help. He just stood there watching them, calculating. Last chance, the leader said. I'll pass. They attacked. 6 Thornbacks, each capable of crushing bone with their bare hands, each wearing natural armor that could deflect most weapons. Against a single human who weighed maybe a third what the smallest of them did. It should have been over in seconds. Had been waiting for this moment for a long time. He'd studied Thornback combat techniques extensively. He knew their preferred attack patterns, their favorite targets, their instinctive responses. He knew that when Thornbacks outnumbered their opponent, they tried to surround and overwhelm, a pack hunting strategy inherited from their evolutionary ancestors. He also knew their weaknesses. The first attacker came from his left, swinging a fist that would have shattered his skull if it connected. Ducked under it, stepped inside her guard and pressed his knuckle into a spot just behind her bone chest plate. The nerve cluster there wasn't protected by armor. She gasped and stumbled, her arm going numb. The second attacker came from behind, spun, caught her wrist, and used her own momentum to redirect her into the first attacker. They went down in a tangle of limbs. The third and fourth came together, more cautious now, retreated, letting them think they had him cornered. When they committed to their attack, he dropped to the ground and swept the legs of one while jabbing the knee joint of the other. Thornback knee armor was thick, but there was a gap where it connected to the thigh plate. A precise strike there was enough to make anyone stumble. The fifth attacker was smarter. She hung back, waiting for an opening, gave her one deliberately, leaving his right side exposed. When she lunged for it, he twisted at the last second and caught her wrist. A quick rotation, a precise application of pressure to her elbow joint, and she was on the ground screaming. That left the leader. She stood alone now, her 5 companions either disabled or struggling to recover. The fight had lasted maybe 40 seconds. Yield said. Never, she charged at him, all rage and wounded pride. She was the best fighter of the group, and she proved it. Her strikes were faster, more coordinated, harder to predict. Took hits. A glancing blow to his shoulder, a solid strike to his ribs, another hit that opened a cut above his eye. But he kept moving, kept watching, kept learning. You're angry, he said, ducking under a punch that would have taken his head off. You've been angry since I got here, not just because I'm human, because I'm succeeding. Because everything you believe about the natural order of things is being proven wrong. Shut up, she snarled, attacking faster. Thornbacks are supposed to be unbeatable. Humans are supposed to be weak. That's how it's always been. That's how it's supposed to be. But here I am still standing, and that terrifies you. She overextended. He'd been waiting for it, goading her, making her angry enough to make a mistake. His hand found the gap in her elbow armor, the same spot he'd targeted on the fifth attacker. But this time, instead of just pressuring the joint, he twisted. The arm broke. She screamed and fell, clutching her shattered elbow. Around her, her companions were starting to recover, but none of them moved to continue the fight. I'm not leaving this academy, said. He was bleeding from a dozen cuts, his ribs were screaming, and he was pretty sure he'd cracked something in his left hand. But he was standing. I'm not going anywhere, and the next time you come for me, I won't stop at broken bones. He walked past them, past their groaning leader, past their shocked stares. At the end of the corridor, he paused. Oh, and one more thing. I know who you are, all of you. I recognized your fighting styles. If anything happens to me, to my friends, to anyone I care about, the administration will know exactly who to blame. He left them there in the darkness. By the time he reached his room, he was struggling to stay upright. He made it inside, closed the door, and collapsed against it. That could have gone better, he muttered. A knock at the door made him wince. It was Nuh's voice. We heard something happened. Are you okay? He hauled himself up and opened the door. Nuh, Ra, and several others crowded the hallway, their faces tight with concern. I'm fine, he said. You're bleeding everywhere, pointed out. That's probably concerning, isn't it? They helped him to his bed while someone ran for a medical kit. As they cleaned his wounds and wrapped his ribs, he told them what had happened. When he finished, the room was silent. 6 Thornbacks, said slowly. She was the young Thornback who had joined the study group, and her face was pale with anger. They sent 6 against you. They were making a point. They tried to kill you. They tried to scare me, winced as applied antiseptic to the cut above his eye. There's a difference. Not much of one, Nuh said. Her forearms were folded and her face was hard. These keepers of the old ways, they're not going to stop. If anything, this will make them more aggressive. I know. Then why didn't you report them? Why didn't you call for help? smiled, and it was a tired smile now, without the usual energy behind it. Because I needed them to know, not the Academy, them, specifically. I needed them to understand that coming after me has consequences, that I'm not prey. He looked around at the faces of his friends, alien and human alike, all watching him with varying degrees of concern and admiration. Humans have a saying, he continued. It's better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. I don't necessarily agree with it, but there's wisdom in it. Some enemies can't be reasoned with. Some enemies only understand strength, so you show them strength. By getting beaten half to death? Raw asked. By beating 6 thornbacks while getting beaten half to death. Lay back on his bed, staring at the ceiling. They'll talk about tonight. They'll tell others, and every keeper who hears the story will think twice before coming after me. That's insane, said. It's strategy. He closed his eyes. Humans have been using it for thousands of years. We take pain and turn it into power. We take defeat and turn it into victory. We take weakness and turn it into strength. The room was quiet for a long moment. Get some rest, Na said finally. We'll take shifts watching your door tonight in case they decide to come back. You don't have to do that. We know. She moved toward the door, then paused. That technique you used to break the leader's arm, the twist in the elbow joint, that's not something you figured out tonight. No. How long have you been preparing for something like this? Smiled without opening his eyes. 3 years, since the day I decided to come here. Nun nodded slowly. Good night, human. Good night. The door closed. Outside, could hear his friends arranging themselves in the hallway, setting up a watch schedule, protecting him. He hadn't expected that, hadn't planned for it. For all his analysis and observation, he hadn't predicted that the aliens he'd come to prove himself against would become the allies who watched over him. Still learning, he whispered to himself, always still learning. He fell asleep with a smile on his face. The attack on changed things. Not immediately. The keepers of the old ways still existed, still resented him, still whispered about the corruption of tradition and the weakness of integration. But the nature of that resentment shifted. They didn't move against him openly anymore. They didn't harass him in ways that could be traced. They were afraid. The story spread through the academy like wildfire. The human who fought 6 thornbacks. The human who broke one of their arms. The human who stood up at the end and promised worse if they tried again. Some students still saw him as weak, as pathetic, as an insult to everything the academy stood for. But now there was fear mixed with their contempt, and fear, knew, was the first step toward respect. His study group grew. More students came to his room at night, curious about the human who kept winning fights he should have lost. Thornbacks came to learn about their own vulnerabilities, came to understand their timing flaws, came to explore the limits of their precognition. And taught them all. The galaxy is bigger than any one species, he said one night, addressing a room packed with a dozen different kinds of aliens. Every world we visit, every enemy we face, every challenge we encounter, it's going to require adaptation. That's what this academy is supposed to teach us. Not just how to fight, but how to survive, how to overcome obstacles that seem impossible. He pointed at a holographic map of the known galaxy. Humans have been in space for less than 300 years. That's nothing compared to most of your species. We should be primitive, we should be insignificant, but we're not because we learned. We watched the more advanced civilizations around us, figured out what they knew, and adapted it for ourselves. In 3 centuries, we went from a backwater world to a major galactic power, not through strength, through learning. And you think you can teach us that? A thornback in the back asked, not hostile, genuinely curious. I think we can teach each other. I know things about your biology that you don't. You know things about combat that I'll never master. No understands politics in ways I can barely imagine. Ra can see probable futures that the rest of us are blind to. He smiled. What if we combined all of that? What if we stopped treating our differences as weaknesses and started treating them as assets? The room was quiet. Then slowly heads began to nod. He's right, said. I've learned more in these study sessions than in any of my formal classes. Not because human fighting techniques work for Thornbacks, they don't, but because understanding how a human thinks about fighting has made me think about fighting differently. Same, Ra added. My precognition has improved since I started studying with, not because he taught me anything about the ability itself, but because understanding how he changes probability patterns has helped me see the future more clearly. This is what humans do, said. We integrate, we combine, we take the best ideas from everywhere and make them our own. It's not theft, it's synthesis, and it's how we survive. He looked around the room at the faces watching him. Alien faces, strange faces, faces that should have been enemies but had become something closer to friends. This academy wants to make us into the best warriors in the galaxy. Fine, let's do that, but let's do it together. Because the galaxy doesn't care about traditions or purity or the way things have always been done. The galaxy only cares about results. The end-of-year assessment came faster than anyone expected. The first-year students were gathered in the main arena, the same place where combat assessments had been held months ago. But this was different. This was the moment that would determine which students advanced to the second year and which were sent home. Matron stood on the stage, her mechanical body gleaming under the arena lights. Her eyes swept across the assembled students, lingering for just a moment on. You have survived your first year, she said. That is an accomplishment, though not as significant as you might think. The true tests begin now. In the coming years, you will face challenges that make this year look like child's play. You will be pushed beyond your limits, broken and rebuilt, transformed into something greater than you are today. She paused. 300 years ago, this academy was founded on a simple principle, that the galaxy's most dangerous warriors would be forged in these halls. We have never accepted compromise. We have never accepted weakness. We have never accepted failure. Her gaze found again. This year we accepted something new. A human male. Many said it was a mistake. Many said he would die or flee or shame himself. The arena went very quiet. Instead, he has reminded us of something we had forgotten. She stepped forward, her mechanical legs clicking against the stone floor. The most dangerous warrior is not the strongest or the fastest. It is the one who refuses to stop learning, the one who sees every defeat as a lesson and every opponent as a teacher, the one who smiles in the face of impossible odds because they already know how they're going to win. She raised her staff, and the arena exploded into noise. The traditional salute, students stamping their feet, clashing their arms, roaring approval in a dozen different languages. It was the highest honor the academy could give to a student. And they were giving it to... He stood in the crowd, surrounded by his friends, Na on his left, Ra on his right, and all the others who had learned from him and taught him in turn. They were cheering too, louder than anyone else. You did it, Na said, her forearms grabbing him in a hug that nearly crushed his ribs. You actually did it. We did it, corrected, all of us. No, she pulled back, looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. This was you. You showed us what we could be. You showed us that weakness isn't something to be ashamed of. It's something to overcome. It's something to understand, said. That's the first step. You can't overcome a weakness until you understand it, and you can't understand your weaknesses until you're willing to admit you have them. He looked around the arena at the hundreds of students still cheering, at the instructors who were watching with expressions ranging from surprise to approval. Humans have always been weak, he continued. We've known that since the beginning. Every predator on our planet was stronger than us, faster than us, better armed than us. We should have died out millions of years ago, but we didn't because we learned to see our weakness clearly, and once we could see it, we could work around it. Is that what you're going to do next year? Ra asked. Keep learning, keep adapting. Smiled, it was the same smile he'd worn since the day he arrived, but now there was something different behind it. Confidence, maybe, or perhaps just exhaustion finally catching up with him. That's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, he said. It's what all of us should do. The galaxy is too big and too strange for anyone to have all the answers. The only way to survive is to keep asking questions. He turned back to face the stage, where Matron was continuing her speech about the challenges ahead. But he wasn't really listening anymore. He was thinking about the future, thinking about all the things he still had to learn, all the opponents he still had to face, all the weaknesses, his own and others, that he still had to understand. The first year was over. He had survived, more than that, he had thrived. But this was just the beginning. Humanity had sent their message to the galaxy. They weren't the strongest. They weren't the fastest. They weren't the most naturally gifted warriors in the cosmos. But they learned, and that made them the most dangerous of all. Cole stood in the arena, surrounded by aliens who had once been enemies and were now friends, and smiled. It was the same smile he'd worn on the day he arrived. But now, finally, it meant something. Now it was a promise. A promise that no matter what came next, no matter how hard the challenges or how powerful the enemies, he would keep watching, keep learning, keep adapting. Because that's what humans did. And he was very, very good at being human.